Good morning, and welcome to all of you here to Torino. It's such a pleasure to see all of you and to be here face to face. I know for many of us, the COVID time has been a time of separation and not an opportunity to be together. So I'm certainly grateful for this occasion, and we welcome our speakers this morning. My name is Alan Fox. I'm the Deputy Director for the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP. I'm very pleased to be the Master of Ceremonies for this brief introduction and welcoming remarks. We have a distinguished group of persons who are going to be speaking with you. Before that, let me give just a couple of comments as we are together again after the very difficult times of COVID. So please take care of yourselves, make sure that you're healthy. We did provide in the welcoming kits masks if you would like to use them. We have for this campus, there is a health clinic that's at the Americas 1 building that you can use if you're not feeling well. But please, let's all stay healthy during these 3 days of meeting. A couple of other minor points. I think all of you have seen that at the entrance there are translation devices for you, and please use them when you're here, but then put them back when you leave because they only work for this particular space. And then you'll see in each of the conference rooms that there's that option. Number 1 is French, number 2 is English, number 3 is Spanish. And you can find that on your dial. We are embarking on an intense series of discussions this 3 days, taking stock of the work that we are doing to build resilient national evaluation systems. But we're also here to have a chance to be together, to have some enjoyment. There will be a cocktail hour this evening in this building on the first floor. That will be from 6 to 7:30. Please join us for that event. And then on Thursday evening, we will have a dinner off campus, and the buses will be at the front gate at 6:30 for all of you to go, where we have a chance to all be together and dine out in the beautiful city of Torino. So now, colleagues, it's my great pleasure to welcome to the podium our host at this great campus, Dr. Giuseppe Casali, Director of the IEO International Training Center.
Distinguished delegates and authorities, colleagues from the UNDP and other UN organizations, ladies and gentlemen, buongiorno. It's my pleasure to welcome you at the International Training Center of the ILO for this 7th National Evaluation Capacities Conference, which has been organized, as you probably know better than I do, by UNDP, Independent Evaluation Office, in collaboration with the Global Evaluation Initiative of the World Bank. It's really an honor for me and my colleagues here at the center to resume our activities in presence on a large scale with this NEC conference, and in particular with this collaboration with UNDP. Thank you very much, Merci. If we only go back for a second with our memories to what happened, at least here in this country, in March 22, 2020, and onwards because of the COVID pandemic, this event really marks a major watershed in the organization of large events at the international level, in particular in the city of Turin. It's really a great pleasure to see all of you here physically present, as well as those participants who are following by connected to streaming. As you know, this 7th NEC conference addresses the specific topic of resilient assessment systems particularly at a critical time for many countries in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And certainly in a world, let me say, which is affected by political, economic, social turmoils, and unfortunately, by too many armed conflicts. So the humanitarian toll is paying a very high price. The International Training Center, since its establishment here in 1964, has contributed through its training activities in reaching out thousands and thousands of participants every year all over the world. Our main objective is to develop the capacity of our constituents to improve and implement decent work policies with the main objective of ensuring improving economic and social conditions. So this NEC conference squares perfectly well into the ILO mandate, and we are pleased to contribute to the achievement of the SDGs by leveraging on the importance of evaluation systems to improve governance. As a matter of fact, we all know that sound evaluation systems concur in tracking progress towards the achievement of development goals. We are also happy that the International Training Center hosts this important conference on this beautiful campus, quite unique in Europe, and in the city of Turin, which the Deputy Mayor, Ms. Michela Favaro, represents here. And let me also say, with the support of the Italian government, here represented by Minister Marco Giungi. Thank you. On behalf of the center staff and those who really work hard and very closely with UNDP and IEO organizers, let me once again welcome you to this important event. Of course, we remain at your disposal for giving you any support in the coming days. And let me also thank particularly our welcome ambassadors, these young volunteers who have seen how much work they are doing in order to make sure that the organization of this conference can be run smoothly. So thank you, merci, gracias, grazie.
Thank you, Giuseppe. It is indeed a pleasure to be here in this beautiful campus. This is the 7th in the series of the National Evaluation Capacity Conferences started in 2009. And throughout this series, they have been organized by the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome now the Director of the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP, Mr. Oscar Garcia.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends. We have been waiting for this moment for so long, honestly. This is the first conference that is taking place after COVID-19. And of course, the development scenery has changed radically after COVID. We have seen important setbacks in development in so many indicators, and you will hear about that in this conference. And we as an evaluation community need to ask ourselves, how do we respond to these changes, to these growing needs of our people in our countries, to have better access to health, to education, to jobs? It's really the effect of compounded crisis that makes a sense of urgency. And that's why this conference is so important. And I want to thank you for being here with us today, because evaluation is needed to really improve the performance of public policies to improve people's lives. We're not here just for the sake of evaluation. The ultimate goal of our presence here is to deliver better development results and to achieve the sustainable development results that we want, not only for us, but for our children and the children of our children. And if we don't act now, we won't have that future as we know it right now. Therefore, we are here gathered to speak about national evaluation capacities. Why do we say in plural capacities? Because not all of us need to know how to conduct an evaluation. Some of us need to know how to commission an evaluation. That's good enough. Some of us know how to use an evaluation. That's very important, right? And we need to be aware that evaluation takes place as a technical discipline within a political context. How do we navigate that political context with the evidence that we are bringing about what works, what doesn't work, what works for whom does it not work, under what circumstances? So evaluation really brings transparency to the public action, brings accountability, and hopefully brings learning as well. So we are here gathered to see that we as evaluators are part of a system. And you know, the system is designed to deliver its results. The problem is that the development model as we know it is not working, at least not for the vast majority of the people in our countries. I come from Bolivia, one of the most beautiful and diverse countries in Latin America, but it is also one of the most unequal. And I have seen the results and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, hindering people to have access to decent health, access to education, access to jobs. We have young women really willing to participate in society with dignity, to build a dignified future for their children, and they are not able to do that. Therefore, when we are here speaking in this conference about national evaluation capacities and how our governments, our civil society, our citizens can participate more forcefully in improving these systems, we need change, but not just any change, not just incremental change. The size of the crisis that we are facing requires transformational change. And I think that together, we would be able to build the new agenda for national evaluation capacity development, the Turin agenda for NEC. And I would like, in closing, thank all the partners who are working with us in building this agenda. Of course, starting with the Global Evaluation Initiative, spearheaded by our colleagues from the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank, and Alison here represents them, our colleagues from multilateral development banks, from different UN agencies gathered here around the United Nations Evaluation Group, from bilateral partners, from civil society, from universities, but also the networks of evaluators who are gathered here, and of course, our bilateral donors and partners in development who are supporting these initiatives. But most importantly, I would like to thank the fantastic team of the IEO, my team there in UNDP, without whose support this conference would not be possible. And I want to thank you, the representatives of more than 100 countries coming here together with your experience. Please share your hopes, your needs, your determination to build a better future for our children. This is your conference. Please speak up. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Oscar. And as Oscar had mentioned, we are delighted to be working in close partnership with the World Bank Independent Evaluation Group, who are a co-sponsor to this conference, as well as a founding partner of the Global Evaluation Initiative. We have, of course, this morning with us, Alison Evans, Director for Evaluation at the World Bank Group. Alison, please.
So good morning, everyone. It's a genuine pleasure to see you all here. And as Oscar says, it is a fantastic opportunity to come together after a period of us being all apart and working remotely and only seeing each other through that small aperture on the screen. I suspect that before now, before COVID-19, we would have taken events like this very much for granted. I suspect none of us is doing that today, and we're all incredibly privileged to be here. But let's not sugarcoat what is going on around us at the moment. We are living in hugely challenging and uncertain times where many areas of societal progress, poverty, inequality, education, health, environment are facing massive shocks and even reversals. In a context like this, the stakes of not making good decisions about where and how to commit resources that respond equitably and inclusively to the key challenges of today and seek to mitigate and avert the crises of tomorrow could not be higher. And the dangers of our decision makers flying blind without the right evidence they need to tackle hugely difficult choices and trade-offs are immense. And so are the risks of weakened or no accountability for the decisions that are taken in our name. All of this serves to underscore the fact that it could not be a more important time to be focusing on the data and evidence needs of our decision makers, and in particular, the sometimes hidden but undeniably vital role of national evaluation systems. We've come a long way in evaluation, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that in recent decades, we've seen nothing short of a revolution in the stature and the practice of evaluation. But while evaluation practice has evolved massively, embedding that practice in the rules, routines, and behaviors of organizations, and most importantly, in the mindsets of decision makers themselves, remains a work in progress. And experience tells us that whatever the context, leadership for building national evaluation systems has to be homegrown. Country ownership really matters. We also know it's a complex process of institutional design with, as Oscar said, many different actors, ranging from evaluators themselves to commissioners, to the multiple users from legislators to civil society organizations and informed citizens, knowledge brokers and translators of evaluation evidence. Collaboration and connection are therefore key, both amongst and between the many stakeholders working in and around evaluation. We're also acutely aware that the pressures on all forms of evidence, including evaluation, are mounting all the time to be more relevant, more timely, more agile, more focused on the big challenges and the big calls of the day, more inclusive, less northern, less elitist. There's no single recipe book for responding to all of this, but there is by now a lot of accumulated good practice and excellent technical and non-technical knowledge that we can share and share amongst us to support the development of national evaluation systems. And this is the motivation behind the establishment of the Global Evaluation Initiative, founded by the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank Group in collaboration with UNDP's IEO, and now involving multiple partners across the global landscape, who all want to amplify global knowledge and support country-led efforts to build robust, reliable, and resilient evaluation capacities and systems. It's terrific as well today to see GEI partnering with UNDP IEO on this NEC event, which brings me to the purpose and the power of a gathering like this, where we can hear from all of you, we can learn from all of you about the progress the challenges in shaping evaluation practice and strengthening evaluation systems, not just rehashing the problems, but finding the solutions for tackling the big challenges of today and tomorrow. We have a clear mission here to make this event count and to take it to the next level by committing to a shared, ambitious Turin agenda. To close, I want to congratulate Oscar and all his colleagues for their vision and determination in pulling together this event, and of course to our hosts here at the ILO ITC. We all know that everything is harder since the pandemic. Even you arriving here and getting your luggage at the same time as you arrive here in Turin. These things are sent to try us. Times are tough, but I know that you will join me in a very warm round of applause to thank Oscar and his team for a fantastic organization. And we're looking forward to these 3 days. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, Alison. The COVID pandemic, war in Europe, have created great havoc in terms of food supply chains around the world. And organizations, how organizations and governments respond to these humanitarian catastrophes is an important element of the evaluation function for many of us. Colleagues, please welcome to the podium Andrea Cook, Director for Evaluation of the World Food Programme.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to Italy, which is the home of the United Nations World Food Programme, for this year's National Evaluation Capacities Conference. The World Food Programme is the world's largest humanitarian organisation fighting hunger. And at the moment, it's actively involved in feeding 130 million of the most poor and vulnerable in the world in the face of the conflicts that we've been and challenges we've been discussing. As others have said, we meet at what I believe to be a really pivotal moment in international development. The world we live in today is not the one we imagined 7 years ago, when all nations united to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. At the World Food Programme, we're acutely aware of the rise of hunger and food insecurity, the impact of long drawn-out conflicts, and the desperate need to build peace. We know that the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 will be felt for many years to come, and we're starting to wake up to the reality of the growing risk of climate change. And as Oscar and Alison have said, it's especially in these times of crisis where truth and objectivity are often lost. And this is a moment really for evaluation to shine a light, so that our leaders and ourselves can make the best possible decisions based on evidence that informs our actions, so that we know what's working, what doesn't and why, and so that we can build forward better, and most importantly, make sure we're not leaving anyone behind. But to achieve this, evaluation must thrive in every nation. All countries need robust evaluation evidence, strong national systems, strong evaluation policies, and above all, the capacities to be able to be in the driver's seat of their own development agendas. So I stand here today because the World Food Programme is firmly committed to strengthening national capacities. And in 2017, we took a step to create regional evaluation units to respond to the commitments of the 2014 UN General Assembly resolution on building national evaluation capacities. And the aim of that resolution was to support governments and to partner national and regional evaluation institutions and experts to build and strengthen evaluation capacities around the world. And as Alison has said, I think we've really seen in the past decade and since 2014, a real acceleration in that progress. And that's really heartening. But there's a great challenge before us. As the era of the Sustainable Development Goals hits the midpoint, there's this urgent need to review activities and to track progress, both globally and nationally. And the evaluation is called upon to shine a much more powerful light on achievement of the SDGs. And I'd urge all of us here to seize this rare opportunity of being together. Across the many sessions that our colleagues have organized over this 3 days, I really encourage you to ask 2 key searching questions. Firstly, how can evaluation and the evidence it generates be more relevant to the critical decisions being made in our countries? And secondly, how can we strengthen capacities so that evaluations are more responsive to country needs, more empowering, more useful, and more engaging and inclusive? On this note, I'd like to say a final word on an initiative that's gaining momentum this year. And this is an initiative which is being led by the government of Nigeria, supported by the World Food Programme, UNICEF, UN Women, Eval Partners, IDEAS, the UN Evaluation Group, and others. And this is for a UN resolution on strengthening evaluation towards the SDGs. We believe this resolution will be a perfect complement to the 2014 resolution, accelerating the progress that's being made in strengthening national evaluation capacities, and through country-led evaluations, looking at progress towards the SDGs and looking at progress towards national policies and programs to contribute to strengthening national evaluation cultures and ensuring that the expertise really does meet the demand for evaluative evidence. With Nigeria here present through the Office of the Special Senior Assistant to the President on the SDGs, I hope we'll have an opportunity to know more about this effort, and I encourage you to reach out to discuss it. And finally, I'd like to thank our colleagues from UNDP for hosting this conference. It's really vital at this time to provide this space for discussion amongst partners so that we can advance this dialogue and above all learn from one another. So I wish you all a pleasant and productive conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. For those of us who have been involved in this National Evaluation Capacity Conference series for some years, we certainly know and have a debt of gratitude to Indra Naidu, who, when he was director of the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP, established and built this effort to what it is now. He continues to play that pivotal role in national evaluation capacity work as the director of the Independent Evaluation Office for the International Fund for Agricultural Development, also headquartered here in Italy. Indra, please.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much, Alan, for the kind words. It's good to see many of you who I've seen right from 2009. My comments are going to be quite short. I echo the excellent introductory remarks by Oscar and Alison and Andrea. These are totally relevant and will help to shape this very important conference. The IOE of the IFAD, based here in Italy, in Rome, congratulates the IEO of UNDP under the very able leadership of Mr. Oscar Garcia and his able team, as well as a global evaluation initiative with Alison Evans and her team, for successfully co-hosting the 7th National Evaluation Capacity Global event here in Turin, Italy. It's a fantastic venue, and we all are extremely impressed by the excellent organizational capability. This event comes at a time when resilient government systems are all the more important to mitigate crisis, like the ones we are still emerging from. The role of all UN agencies is critical, and in the food security sector, the one that I work for, IFAD, we find it become absolutely relevant because we have seen what the impact of the crisis has had on increase in poverty levels. The NEC series has now moved across the globe from its origins in 2009 in Morocco, and it has built steam and momentum over the past decade through very strategic partnerships with key evaluation entities and hosting governments. And these include South Africa, Brazil, Thailand, Turkey, and in 2019, Egypt. This event is also fortunate in that it has all the partners here. It draws on the very formidable capacity of GEI, offering more support to governments in the important work of delivering better results to citizens. I wish to congratulate the organizing teams, as well as all the partners and sponsors, and all of you for getting here. We welcome you to Italy, and I'm sure the deliberations are going to be rich and fruitful. And as they would say in Italy, you really are going to have a fantastic time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indran. Colleagues, we are here on the banks of the beautiful Po River in the great city of Torino. And we are honored to have with us the Deputy Mayor of Torino, Michela Favaro, to also give welcoming remarks. Please, Michela.
Good morning, distinguished guests. It is an honor to host in Turin so many important representative authorities from many countries all over the world. We find ourselves in the heart of the ILO campus, which is one of the main strategic assets of our city. As Mr. Casalo was saying, it was established in 1964 through an agreement between the Italian government, the ILO, and the city of Turin. The topic you will discuss in these 3 days are crucial also for our local administration to face the new challenges and the huge economic crisis we are experiencing in our community. I think it will be really interesting to know the Turin agenda. It is an honor that Turin will give the name of the result of your discussion. And I hope that you will enjoy your staying here in Turin. You will appreciate the beauty of the nature around the campus and our historic and cultural heritage. So, benvenuti a Torino, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Michela. At each of the 7 NEC conferences, we have gratefully received the support and partnership of the host national government. And so it is again here in Italy. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Minister Marco Giungi, head of the Unit for Strategies and Multilateral Global Processes for Development Cooperation in the Italian Ministry for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me, first of all, as representative of the host country, to once again welcome you all to Italy and to this magnificent city of Turin, which is, I hope you will have a possibility to discover, full of tradition, but also at the forefront of innovation. Hosting in particular the UN campus in Turin is a source of pride for Italy, and I'm certain for Torino as well. Italy is firmly convinced of the importance of multilateralism, traditionally and particularly, I would say, today in this very uncertain times we are facing. It has been said, cannot be underlined enough, how the COVID pandemic associated with the war in Ukraine, with the effects of climate changes, is affecting the life of everybody. As of the day before yesterday in Venice, the Human Development Report has been launched in Europe, and the figures are appalling. I mean, for the first time, 9 countries out of 10 in the world have presented receding figures in their development. 6 persons out of 10 throughout the world are seriously worried about the future. And the concurring multidimensional crises lead to a competition for resources. This is something that we have to face. And in such a situation, reliable data, evaluation systems are paramount. We cannot afford wastes in public expenditure. We must enhance and improve efficiency of public expenditure, and your role in this regard is indeed paramount. And I underline reliable data because we are living in the information age, but we are living also in the disinformation age. And political decisions must be based on data-based evidence and not on chats on social media. But data, scientific evidence must compete with fake news and malicious campaign, as we have seen lately through the COVID pandemic, as we're seeing with the war in Ukraine, as we're seeing with the causes and effect of the climate changes. So as I was saying, the Human Development Report has presented appalling figures. More than 6.5 million lives have been lost during the last 2 years because of COVID. And according to UNDP, more than 400 million jobs have been lost. Food insecurity, increasing debt, burden societies disproportionately. Education has been disrupted during the COVID pandemic. And a soaring inflation has further deepened the wide inequalities. We must all be aware that this crisis requires the international community to further step up its engagement and cooperation, and that only multilateral engagement can face global challenges. We are off track with SDGs. This does not mean that we have to give up our fight. On the contrary, it means that we have to once more rely on multilateralism, because the global challenges require global efforts. No single state, no matter how powerful and rich is, can face all these challenges alone. And we need international cooperation in order to build back better. The first step in facing any problem is to be aware of it. So data collection, which is the upstream side of the evaluation, is paramount. In a complex and integrated system, this means to dedicate massive resources to collect and analyze data. Therefore, a pivotal element in the strategy aimed at responding to the challenges of our time is for every country to implement a systemic, efficient, and accountable national evaluation system. The task of strengthening evaluation capacities is hard. At the national level, governments make important decisions every day on a range of issues, such as health matters, the design and execution of programs and strategies, budget, taxation, and investment measures, legislation. However, they need adequate data, whereas they offer back in the supportive legal and regulatory environment for monitoring and evaluating services. In many developing countries, evaluation and monitoring functions are not even institutionalized, and this structural lack should always be taken into consideration in capacity building interventions. While providing a legal framework for monitoring and evaluating services is often a national government priority, at a subnational level, as the current crisis has demonstrated. Local authorities and intermediary cities in particular have been the first responders to crisis. They are the actors for the localization and can play a major role in collecting the data necessary to elaborate national strategies, as well in providing services and feedback. They should therefore always be considered in the national strategies and international cooperation programs. Allow me to focus a bit more on Italy's action on this aspect. During its 2021 presidency of the G20, we launched the G20 platform on SDGs localization and intermediary cities, an open and inclusive mechanism hosted by OECD and UN Habitat, which aims to promote peer dialogue, knowledge sharing, capacity building on effective approaches to SDG localization. In just 2 days, on October 28 in Paris, there will be the annual meeting, and Italy also supported the institution of the Local 2030 Coalition, hosted by UN Habitat, and aimed at enhancing the dialogue between the United Nations system and the networks of local, regional, and national governments, businesses, civil society, and other local actors. We strongly believe that this platform could play a pivotal role in improving the global action in order to achieve more resilient national evaluation systems for sustainable development. So once again, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Italy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak up in front of you. Thanks to the ILO for this organizing in this very beautiful environment, and to UNDP and the World Bank for organizing, and I wish you a very good and productive job.
Minister, thank you for those remarks. And colleagues, please join me in a round of applause for all of the speakers this morning. They have clearly set out for us the importance of the work we do at a time of great need for clear and insightful findings, conclusions, and recommendations for the work of our ministries and organizations. Next, we will have several continuing welcome remarks, but we will have them on the videos that you will see on this side and that side. Our speakers are in very comfortable chairs, but they can't see those videos. So you may want to take a seat back in the to be able to see. There will be 3 very brief welcoming addresses. They will include Achim Steiner, who is the administrator for UNDP, Gilbert Hongbo, who is the Director General for the International Labour Organization, and David Beasley, who is the Executive Director of the World Food Programme. So hopefully our IT is working well, and they will come up on the screen shortly. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to join the 7th National Evaluation Capacities Conference being held this year in the historic and beautiful city of Torino. It is hosted by the Global Evaluation Initiative and the Independent Evaluation Office of the United Nations Development Programme, or brief IEO. The theme of this year's conference reflects on the importance of building resilient national evaluation systems. Heeding the harsh lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic, building resilience and stability clearly must be at the heart of sustainable development. From shaping more robust healthcare systems to reinforcing social protection to rolling out new insurance solutions. This will enable countries and communities to be better prepared for the next crisis that, in one form or another, I know and we all know is inevitable. In this respect, look to the Philippines, where UNDP is working closely with the National Economic and Development Authority to develop and strengthen government evaluation systems. This is ensuring stronger evidence and data-based decision-making, helping to ultimately strengthen government accountability. As we seek to support countries to enhance their national evaluation capacities, we should first look inwards and see where we ourselves can also improve. For example, IO in UNDP is rolling out several new tools as it aims to get ahead of a rapidly changing development landscape. Consider the Artificial Intelligence for Development Analytics Initiative, or IDA. It aims to tackle the challenge of extracting evidence from our archives, which was manual, resource-intensive, and time-consuming up to now. IDA is a machine learning model that extracts key insights from 6,000 evaluation reports stored in the IO's Evaluation Resource Center, complete with a web portal to access the findings. Ultimately, by helping colleagues to extract critical data from evaluations, they can make more informed decisions or judgments on their projects and programs. There are also a range of new online courses so that UNDP and UN colleagues can learn new evaluation skills and keep up to date with emerging developments in the field. In addition, we are also making a concerted effort to learn from our partners and outside sources. Our call for submissions in advance of this conference surfaced a fascinating range of pioneering approaches. That included innovative data collection and management systems in countries such as Eritrea and Cabo Verde. Or consider Belarus, where its statistical authority is finding new ways to combine data sources to improve reporting on the Sustainable Development Goals. Other submissions include novel ways to ensure that evaluation was maintained during the COVID-19 pandemic. It includes Senegal, where mobile phone data, for instance, was used to measure and address the socioeconomic impacts of the pandemic. Evaluation is not only helping UNDP to deliver better results for the countries and communities we serve. By continuously updating our own evaluation systems, we hope that UNDP is also able to offer this expertise to our partner countries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence demonstrates that evaluation strengthens the transparency of governments while boosting accountability to citizens. In doing so, national monitoring and evaluation systems play an important role in building more stable and resilient societies. At a time when viruses and climate change pay no heed to borders, we have to recognize that our common challenges can also benefit from our collective intelligence. In that context, this conference is an opportunity to share cutting-edge evaluation approaches and new solutions that can be the foundation for interventions that drive progress across the SDGs. That includes everything from projects that can help countries to decarbonize more rapidly, to new ways to expand access to clean energies that create new green jobs, or to advancing gender equality and empowering women. Ultimately, evaluation can provide decision makers with the evidence they need to adapt programs, projects, and institutions or policies to break out of our global uncertainty complex, helping to improve the health and well-being of both people and planet. Development depends on learning lessons. Evaluation is one way in which we can make sure that we do not overlook this enormous resource. I wish you a most productive conference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ILO is honored to host the 7th National Evaluation Capacities Conference here in our International Training Center. For the first time ever, this conference includes all of the ILO's traditional partners, government, workers, and employers' organizations. Your topic, Resilient National Evaluation System for Sustainable Development, is both relevant and timely. Development is still leaving too many behind. Progress has undoubtedly been made since the 2030 agenda was adopted, but there has also been significant setbacks. The COVID-19 crisis aggravated pre-existing economic and social crises. Just as we saw the first signs of recovery, the food, fuel, and finance crisis hit. It brought economic uncertainty and deepening inequalities. All this on top of the pre-existing crisis of climate change. These are massive challenges. Working together, we can and we will tackle them. But in doing so, we must ensure that our hard-won advances in social justice are preserved. Not just preserved, but reinvigorated. To do this, we will need a new social contract supported by a social justice coalition. This must be centered around human, environmental, economic, and societal values. And it must be supported by the knowledge and evidence that quality evaluation can provide. The COVID-19 pandemic caused great hardship, but it also led to innovation in development and humanitarian work. Access to data and real-time evidence allowed for rapid policy responses, supporting a human-centered recovery. For example, the ILO's Evaluation Office issued guidance and protocols on how to continue evaluations during the pandemic. We also designed a nowcasting model to track the disruption in labor markets caused by COVID-19. The ILO's monitor on the world of work became the go-to data source for policymakers and development partners. Equally, the ILO's traditional ways of working also stood the test. Once again, we saw that social dialogue is key to economic and social cohesion and good governance. It plays an important role in promoting harmonious labor relations. Good governance also goes hand in hand with evaluation. Evaluation promotes public accountability and contributes to public trust in governments. Evaluation also shows us the how and the why of the changes we need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And evaluations can also offer accountability, transparency, and learning. It is for this reason that evaluation must be seen as an essential partner in sustainable development. In the past decade, the ILO has placed an increased emphasis on national evaluation capacities and systems. They play a vital role in assessing and boosting progress in our decent work country programs, and by extension, the SDGs. With the support of our evaluation office, the ILO has empowered governments and our social partners, workers and employers. Through capacity development, they can contribute to national evaluation systems that measure progress toward the SDGs, including SDG 8 on decent work for all. Since 2018, the ILO's evaluation network has trained more than 500 tripartite constituents to track progress on the SDGs. The training covered knowledge systems such as the ILO's e-eval discovery database, and it showed them how to use these tools to improve decision-making. The i-eval discovery database is public, and it contains thousands of evaluation reports, lessons learned, and good practices. These can help shape policies and programs based on evidence of what works and why. We still have a way to go, but I am sure collaborations such as this conference will greatly advance efforts to create resilient national evaluation systems. And in turn, these will support the goal of sustainable development. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you today for the 7th National Evaluation Capacities Conference. This year's event is taking place against the backdrop of an unprecedented global food crisis, with the threat of famine and starvation growing all the time. Today, 345 million people are marching towards starvation. That's more than 2.5 times the number before the pandemic. And 50 million people in 45 countries are literally knocking on famine's door. For many of these people, the World Food Program's assistance means the difference between life and death. As we go all out to deliver emergency food aid, work with communities to build resilience, and strengthen global food systems, it's critical that we learn what's most effective in the fight to end hunger, and that we apply these successes right across our operations. That's why the focus of this year's conference on resilient systems and evaluation in fragile contexts is so important. Independent evaluations provide vital information about the effectiveness, the impact, and of course, the sustainability of our work. They promote transparency and trust within our many donors and partners, and shine a light on effective approaches that deliver tangible results. And when tough decisions have to be made, we need access to the best possible evidence to ensure we make the right call. Your work as evaluation experts underpins the frontline programs that save lives and change lives every single day in the world's most challenging places. Thank you for everything you do. I wish you all a very successful and productive conference.
Before introducing our keynote speaker this morning, I have been asked to talk about the digital revolution and how the pipelines are still clogged sometimes. And in particular, a request for you to switch off your hotspot sharing and use the ITC ILO public site so that we don't get jammed up, because our IT colleagues are telling us that we're clogging the works here. So please utilize the public site that's available for all of you to be able to share and to get information. You've heard from Director General Hungbo that he talked about decent work for all. That is the password to get into that site. So please use it so that we can make sure that we can keep all the communication flowing. Colleagues and honored guests, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinosa to this conference as our guest speaker this morning. She is a politician and a diplomat of great accomplishment and renown, having served as Ecuador's Minister for Foreign Affairs, permanent representative for Ecuador at the United Nations, and President of the UN General Assembly during its 73rd session. Maria Fernanda Espinosa is a global leader in sustainable development and has been an active and chief negotiator in Rio +20, as well as the climate conferences. And she is a poet and an essayist, having published articles across a stunningly wide array of issues: the Amazon River, culture, heritage, development, climate change, intellectual property, foreign policy, integration, defense, and security, and 5 volumes of poetry. A quote from her acceptance speech to the General Assembly in 2018 offers sage advice to those of us in government service. She said, "As you know, I am a poet as well as a politician. As such, I am fully aware that no view is useful if we do not see, and no word has value if we do not listen. I will be ready to listen to you and to you all, and to work for and with you." So, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored this morning to have the chance to see and to listen to Maria Fernanda Espinosa. Maria, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this very generous introduction. And Ladies and gentlemen, it's a true privilege to be with you today. And my gratitude, of course, goes to the organizers, the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP and its director, Oscar Garcia, the Global Evaluation Initiative of the World Bank, our hosts, Giuseppe Casali and the International Training Center of ILO, the Italian government, of course, and the municipal government of beautiful Torino. Greetings to all present here today, to the ones that are following online, ministers, experts, academics, and the evaluation community. And believe me, I would prefer to be a keynote listener here because you are the experts. It's not easy to come after the wise words of experts and practitioners. I must confess that I feel a little intimidated by the clarity and the depth of what we have heard in the opening speeches today. And it is impossible, of course, to avoid agreeing with every word, and it is also difficult not to repeat what we have heard this morning. I would like, of course, to start by, in a way, paraphrasing what we have just heard. First, we heard loud and clear, the world is facing a profound, interconnected and simultaneous crises that span from the COVID-19 pandemic and its social and economic consequences to the climate emergency, the extinction crisis, transactional inequalities, wars, human security stress. And I could go, believe me, on and on. And as I often say, of course, these are not the problems, but rather symptoms of a more profound and systemic civilizational breakdown that requires a whole of society, a whole of government approaches. And of course, it needs our multilateral system. It needs a bold global multilateral response. That calls, of course, for collective action, for creativity, for responsibility. Number two, the outlook, and we heard from you, from the speakers online, the outlook is bleak. We know it. The COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine have unleashed an exponential increase in the cost of living due to the triad that we all know, energy, food, and financial crises together. And the last UN report on SDG implementation is really disheartening. You mentioned the report on the European implementation of SDG, but I'm talking about the global outlook. And the truth is that the numbers are disheartening, and there is an evident backsliding in almost every SDG. Let me share some numbers, some more numbers. 93 million were pushed into extreme poverty only in 2020. With the current national climate commitments, instead of achieving the Paris Agreement target to peak emissions by 2025 and reach net zero by 2050, the trend shows steady growth of emissions with a rise of 14% by 2030. Today, the world is facing the most significant number of violent conflicts since 1946. 1/4 of the world population is living in conflict-affected areas, and 100 million have been forced to flee from their homes as May of this year. And we already know, we know it, you know it. The highest price is always paid by the most vulnerable: women and girls, children, indigenous peoples, migrants and refugees, persons with disabilities, the elderly. And here again, child labor and child marriage numbers have seen unprecedented growth. Gaps and inequalities are persistent. A woman in sub-Saharan Africa has around 130 times higher risk of dying from causes related to pregnancy or childbirth than a woman in Europe or North America. That's inequalities in one phrase. Number three, we often hear and we heard from the very comprehensive and forward-looking report from the UN Secretary General called Our Common Agenda, that we need a new social contract. Local, national, global contracts for that matter. And I cannot agree more. We need to recommit to the basic principles of the UN Founding Charter: cooperation, solidarity, peaceful coexistence, and respect for human rights. It all comes down to, and if you allow me, I would like to paraphrase and adapt a little bit President Roosevelt, 4 fundamental freedoms: freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom from speech and worship. And I would add one more. This is freedom to live in harmony with nature. This leads us to the obvious question of what to do, how to face these challenges and do it together, how to do it. And the paradox is that we live in the most sophisticated and prolific technological revolution. We have the knowledge, we know more and better, and we have the means, the resources, the power, even if they are unevenly distributed. And so why can we not act? Why can we not respond, decide, and simply exercise our instinct of self-preservation? That's the question I ask myself, and I ask us all. Why are we not able to learn from experience and not to repeat the same mistakes of the past? And of course, the answer is not so straightforward. There is a great difficulty in bridging the political, the economic, the cultural dimensions of decision-making and problem-solving, and identifying what is holding us back as humanity. And I strongly believe that we have only two choices. We have the option to either stay in paralysis because the world is in such a chaos and just be in despair, or we can decide to resolve to act and do it collectively and use these crises as levers for transformation. And that's why we're here today together. A great example of what humanity can do, what our international community can do when we act collectively and responsibly, is the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we need the same spirit, the same drive, the same leadership. So against this backdrop, I propose 3 keywords for us to reflect on. And these 3 keywords to build resilient and robust evaluation system are time, scale, and impact. Let's start with time. For disconnected time cycles that call for adaptive, flexible, and yet highly institutionalized evaluation systems. These 4 unmatching time cycles are political, are social, are ecological, and crisis cycles. First, a political cycle is frequently related to a government's term and its public policy planning and evaluation performance, typically for 4 or 5 years. And this is also associated with the political stability of countries. And we know that we are not performing that well on that front either. Second, the cycles of social change and adaptation, the time for societies to learn, to adapt, and to respond to a particular policy or normative decision. It takes time. It takes often longer time spans than the political cycles. For example, policies on using single-use plastics or energy austerity, etc. Third, the times of nature to adapt to abrupt changes, to simply survive or regenerate. For example, massive deforestation or the changes in the atmosphere that cause climate change. These are long-term cycles that require both shock and urgent decisions and long-term planning and evaluation. And fourth, and it is perhaps the most significant challenge of our times, which is how to govern in constant iterated crises and emergencies. It happens that today, making decisions in the midst of an emergency has become the new normal. The government representatives here know that very well. Perhaps the best example is how communities, how local authorities, national governments, and multilateral institutions responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic was a magnifier of the dysfunctions of our societal arrangements. Institutional designs, the vulnerabilities of our societies, it all came out, in a big way, in a magnified way. Regardless of a country's GDP or population, the pandemic found us unprepared and called for the need to craft more resilient and adaptive systems to face emergencies. And we're not speaking about only the need for robust national health systems, but we're also talking about global supply chains, transport, adequate means to learn and make critical decisions, and do so using virtual means. At the UN, for example, the General Assembly, and I follow that closely, of course, had to adapt its own technology and modalities to allow for remote voting and remote approval of resolutions. The issue here and the learning here is how to address the challenges of the simultaneity of crisis and responses from the policy and the political perspective, and also about challenges about prioritizing and harmonizing decisions between urgency and mid and long-term structural interventions and transformations. That's where evaluation comes to play, of course. The challenge is how to align these different time spans. One way, of course, is to close the knowledge, policy, practice, and power gaps. And for that, we need well-informed, responsible, and active citizenship. We need adaptive, resilient, and effective planning and evaluation ecosystems that require solid institutions and social ownership. And we need systems and institutions that outlive specific governments and evaluation and structures that are built in the planning, the practices, the organizational culture, and our governance architecture. Evaluation is about preventing, anticipating, proposing at the same time that it learns about the past. And you know that much better than me because you are the experts. The number 2 keyword is scale. If we go back to the idea of a troubled world of interconnected, interdependent, and simultaneous crises, we know that we need cross-scale solutions. We can take any example. Let's go back to the example of COVID-19 or climate change. The role of communities, of local governments, of national governments, of parliaments, of regional integration bodies, and global multilateral institutions all have a role to play. They have specific mandates. They're accountable to different constituencies. However, policy coherence and mutual accountability are not a given. Policy and decision-making on different scales are often disconnected. contradictory, and even duplicative. Therefore, planning and evaluation ecosystems should allow for weaving across the scales, a bottom-up and a top-down flux to foster greater coherence and cooperation, more effective accountability and transparency, and better implementation capacity of global agreements like the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on financing for development. I would say, therefore, that an effective global evaluation ecosystem is an essential component of global governance. Multi-level governance arrangements are the best way to address some of the most pressing deficits of our institutions and governing systems. The implementation, and what are these challenges? Implementation, inclusion, participation, and accountability deficits. I'm sure that you all have examples of the lack of complementarity and coherence and how it can really affect performance and delivery in our sustainable development project. The idea of a whole of government and whole of society approaches to crisis solving is written down, and you know better than me, in almost every good governance manual. But we also know that political tensions and differing views and priorities among levels of government are frequent, especially in highly polarized political environments. Let me give you a very concrete example here. We know that cities consume nearly 80% of the world's energy and produce around 60% of the global emissions. So in most countries, local authorities are primarily responsible or share essential aspects of public policy to regulate energy production and emissions. This means that the energy transition, the national plans we have set up for ourselves, must adjust to the global goals established in the Climate Paris Agreement and include cities and local governments if we want to ensure implementation and if we want to ensure that we stabilize our climate. Once again, resilient, adaptive, well-institutionalized planning and evaluation systems are vital to ensure coherence in delivery capacity. I would even say that robust evaluation systems can and should help bridge the scale short circuits that we experience and even broker conflict solving. The number 3, and I'm almost there, so just bear with me, is impact. And I would add impact and transformation. I want to bring this third keyword, or rather keywords, to your attention. Perhaps because one of today's most critical issues is the trust deficit of people in institutions and in the capacity of those leading these institutions to deliver the rights and the services that they expect and deserve. The steady growth of poverty, we heard, unemployment, insecurity, fiscal stress, not only in the developing world, but also now in the developed countries, have caused disenchantment, a breach of citizens' trust in institutions. And this is true for local service providers, for parliaments, for national public service, to the global institutions, including our United Nations. Recent surveys demonstrate a growing lack of confidence in governments among citizens. For example, a recent OECD study from only last July shows that only 4 out of 10 people trust their governments. And in my own region, in Latin America, 8 out of 10 people do not trust political parties. This means that our democracies are in trouble. And trust building is, of course, it is connected to making institutions and democracies deliver for people. Electoral democracies, we know it, are not enough anymore. They are not enough. Democracies face a performance problem-solving deficit. This means that there is a participation, to harmonize legitimacy, through informed and sustained citizens' participation with efficiency in public decision-making. And of course, accountability is critical to this. Again, let me repeat, robust and institutionalized evaluation systems should be at the center of trust building and accountability. This means that evaluation cannot be a simple technocratic exercise, but rather a politically sensitive process for building co-responsibility and social ownership. In some, strong, resilient, and effective evaluation systems are critical to strengthen our democracies, to redress course, to foster social ownership, and see palpable positive outcomes of public policy and decision-making. So coming back to our three keywords today, time, scale, and impact, we can say that resilient evaluation systems should be adaptive and well-equipped to respond to unexpected changes. A resilient evaluation system should allow for a snapshot assessments of a particular decision or action, a sort of an account of the past, and also be visionary, forward-looking, scenario building to reflect, redress, change course, and in doing so, reinvent the future. So this community is about reinventing the future. But what are the enablers for resilient and effective evaluation system? I would also mention very quickly three: planning, institutional capacity, and reliable data. The enablers that I just mentioned should also foster greater cooperation among and within countries. The challenge, therefore, lies in the ability of evaluation ecosystems to be institutionalized, predictable, systematic, independent, reliable, and allow for comparability, of course. But at the same time, this is very important to be adaptive, context sensitive, flexible, and open to innovation. This is perhaps how we can define resilience and effectiveness of evaluation processes. So in closing, we cannot simply assume that crises and emergencies are the new normal and that is a manifest destiny and remain in a state of paralysis. I would strongly argue that human-made crises should have human-made solutions. And we have a shared responsibility, a role to play for a renewed social contract or contracts. As late Kofi Annan used to say, I am a stubborn optimist. We cannot afford the luxury of pessimism. I know that we can look at the future with hope and not with despair, with responsibility and not with indifference. And we are gathered here today because we are not indifferent. The evaluation community has a vital role to play in rebuilding trust in institutions and democracies, in fostering accountability and designing prospects for a better future to close the gap between our aspirations and rights and what it is possible. That's what good politics are about. That's what development is about. And allow me here to close with a poem from the great Canadian poet, singer, and composer, Leonard Cohen. And he says, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I thank you for your patience and for your attention.
Inspiring words and challenging words to all of us. Thank you so much for your presentation to us, and for all of the welcoming remarks that we've heard this morning. It has certainly laid the foundation for the next couple of days for us. It is so true. I think we all have the experience of the deficit in trust in governments these days. And it really is the challenge that Maria Fernanda Espinosa has given us in terms of the role that we play as evaluators in helping to give truth to power. And that really is our continuing challenge that we will be talking about as we look at the continuing development of national evaluation systems that we're all working on. I know that many of us have traveled from different time zones, and jet lag may be upon a few of us. I am pleased to announce that the next step in our morning is a coffee break. That coffee break is downstairs. You'll see that there's coffee opportunity all over. We then will have a second plenary that will start at 11:15. So we have quite a bit of time for you to see each other, have a chance to meet old friends that you haven't seen for a while. Thank you, all of you, for your interest. And of course, thank you for the guest speakers and welcoming this morning.